Neighbor Totoro was first released in 1988 and is loved by both children and parents everywhere today. So much so that it is said by many to be the most iconic masterpiece of Hayao Miyazaki's early Ghibli career. And that is no understatement given how impactful this movie was in general. The characters have become the most merchandisable brand that Ghibli has ever created. Even Disney took advantage of this when they owned the rights. Just by looking at a stuffed animal, even if you haven't seen the movie, you know immediately where that character is from. So, yeah, Totoro is a pretty iconic character. But is the movie really worth all the hype? I'll give you my thoughts on it, but first, a little backstory. In the early 70s, movie sales were on the decline in Japan due to the rising popularity of television. Thus, many animators were forced to transition from movies to TV in order to find work. But as the hype for Japanese anime on the tube was growing, legendary animator Hayao Miyazaki grew worried. He noticed that many anime series were starting to lean more towards action, thrills, and explosions rather than character-driven stories, especially after the success of the first Star Wars movie, which began the public's fascination for space operas throughout the 80s. Believing that the characters of anime were losing more and more of their humanity, Miyazaki feared that people were being attracted to anime for the wrong reasons. He wanted to prove that quiet and subtle moments were just as important for entertainment, if not more so. It's unclear exactly when Miyazaki first came up with the idea for Totoro, but some of the inspiration came from his residency in Tokorozawa City. It's said that the word Totoro comes from the Japanese word tororu, meaning troll. But it's also possible that the name Totoro was inspired off of the name of the city. Having had a passion for nature his entire life, Miyazaki would often take strolls through the nearby Sayama Hills and think back to his childhood, playing in the woods and imagining all the creatures that lived there. There had to be a way to transfer those experiences to the screen, but Miyazaki had a hard time getting the film off the ground. He pitched the idea to the publishing company Tokuma Shoten in the early 80s, but it was rejected. Years later, even after the success of his previous films, his attempts to fund Totoro continued to fail. Executives just weren't interested. They didn't think that there was an audience for a story about two girls and a friendly creature that they meet in the woods. It just didn't sound exciting. Said Miyazaki, back then, a story without a hero or a girl with superpowers and the ordinary Japanese scenery as a backdrop was not considered entertaining enough. Entertainment back then was all about guns, action, and speed. I wanted my movie to be peaceful, tranquil, and innocent. I wanted to create that kind of world. I also wanted to prove it that a movie like this could be successful. So for a while, it looked like Totoro was never going to see the light of day. But then Toshio Suzuki, one of Studio Ghibli's top producers and another founder of the company, came up with a solution. Pack Totoro with another Ghibli production as a double feature. He was currently working on a deal with the Shinchosa Publishing Company to secure the rights for the short story Grave of the Fireflies, the tale of two young siblings who struggle to survive the destruction of their country during the final months of World War II. The film would be directed by Ghibli's third founder, Isao Takahata. Suzuki knew that schools would be taking their classes to see fireflies for historical value. Totoro seemed like the ideal follow-up to warm the audience's hearts after the emotional roller coaster of fireflies. Executives approved of this idea, and with that, both Ghibli movies were released back-to-back on April 16, 1988. Totoro focuses on two sisters named Satsuki and Mei, voiced in the Disney English dub by real-life siblings Dakota and Elle Fanning. The two girls accompany their father, voiced by Tim Daly, as they move into a new home in the countryside. One day, Mei discovers baby forest spirits and chases them into the woods, where they eventually lead her into the presence of Totoro, voiced by Frank Welker. From there, the movie becomes a series of various situations that focus on character and atmosphere rather than a flowing three-act narrative. Within the first 15 minutes, we get the sense that these girls know how to enjoy the little things in life. But as time goes on, we realize the possibility that they are relying on their imaginations in order to escape the harsh reality that their sick mother may die. It's unclear exactly what type of illness she has, but the fact that she's in a hospital indicates that it's something serious, and therefore leads us to assume the worst. In fact, there is a theory that Totoro is actually part of the children's imaginations as well. And while I do respect that theory, I personally think that that's a bit of a stretch, because there are some moments in the movie where the kids achieve something that I don't think they would be able to do on their own. But what do I know? This is only the second time I've watched it. Maybe I just want to believe he's real. The movie was first introduced to the US in 1993 through Streamline Pictures and distributed through Fox Entertainment. So I was aware of the hype surrounding it growing up, but I never got a chance to see it until I was an adult. And I'm sorry to say, yeah, I think the popularity of this movie is a bit overblown. Don't get me wrong, it's a good movie, but the praise it got was monumental. To me, it's just a decent film. But that doesn't mean I don't see why people love it. I do love each of the characters. This family feels like a real family, and the kids act like real kids. There's no evil villain, no violence, no horror, no end-of-the-world type situation. This is just the story of an everyday loving family that is trying to make the best of a life-threatening situation. And sometimes that's all you need. Plus, these are some of the most open-minded parents I've ever seen. We've all seen movies where the adults disregard their children's imaginations and try to be more realistic. But even though these parents never interact with the forest spirits, they don't try to downgrade their children's beliefs either. They just play along, to the point where you begin to wonder if, on some level, they actually do believe they're kids. That's really refreshing. But my favorite moments, appropriately enough, are the ones with Totoro. After all, this is what we came to see, right? Being in Totoro's presence just gives me a sense of comfort. Just by looking at him, I relax and accept the thought that everything is going to be okay, for the moment. But surprisingly, he's not in the film as much as I thought he'd be, and that's a bit of a letdown. The ending seems to come out of nowhere as well. I was actually blindsided when the credits started rolling, and immediately thought to myself, wait, that's it? I don't know, maybe my hopes were too high because of the hype, or maybe I just missed my chance to fully appreciate it, but I was actually disappointed. So yeah, while I do enjoy this movie, I don't think it's something that I would have really been in a rush to watch again if it wasn't for all the praise. For those of you that love this movie, I can totally see why. It's just, for me, this movie was built up way too much. But despite how I feel, the success can't be ignored. While it did make a profit when it first premiered, it didn't get the kind of feedback that Miyazaki was hoping for. I think part of that reason may have been that while the double feature pitch was a good idea, both films were meant for different audiences. Grave of the Fireflies was meant more for an older audience, while Totoro was aimed more towards little kids. It wasn't until a year later that the success of Totoro really took off, said Toshio Suzuki. Out of all the movies made by Ghibli, Totoro had the worst opening box office. A year later, it aired on TV. When it aired on NTV, the ratings went off the chart. Merchandising deals started flowing in soon afterwards, turning Totoro into a juggernaut. Totoro's success basically solidified Miyazaki's directorial career in the animation industry. The character even became the official mascot of the company. Legendary film critic Roger Ebert gave the movie 4 stars out of 4, listing it as one of the greatest family movies ever made. In 2017, YouTube film critic Chris Stuckman gave the movie an A+, saying that it still holds up today. In late 2018, after 30 years, Totoro was finally released theatrically in China, becoming the second highest-grossing film its opening weekend, second only to Aquaman. I can never be as nostalgic with this movie as others. I probably wouldn't even rank this in my top 5 favorite Ghibli movies. But I can understand other people's love for it. Movies affect us all in different ways. That's what makes them so interesting. So if you're a fan of this movie and love it to death, that's totally cool. Go ahead and enjoy. This movie may grow on me over the coming years, but for now, I'm going to give My Neighbor Totoro 4 stars. Guys, thank you so much for continuing to watch my videos, and stay tuned for my next Ghibli review for The Secret World of Arrietty, which will be in theaters on September 29th and 30th. Go to fathomevents.com or ghiblifest.com to see if it's playing at a theater near you. And if you like this, you can click here and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.